Whether it was Senate File 575 that we saw a couple weeks ago, and that did not even make it to the floor for a vote by the full Senate, or whether it was legislation we did a year or two ago on voter ID, some of us would prefer to call it voter suppression. The path that we have taken has been very different in this state, and one that I'm not very proud of. We now have a process where every legally cast vote is now not being counted, where we have put up more and more barriers to the ballot to specific groups of people in this state. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what we are so afraid of. But we seem to be. And so I'm obviously very much opposed to the amendment sitting before us today. Senator Smith did mention several things that this bill or this new amendment included, but let me tell you what this original bill did. It actually solved a real problem. It solved the problem that was brought up in House File or in House District 55. 33 absentee ballots were cast. They came to the auditor's office. They weren't going to count them. It went through the U.S. Postal Service's intelligent mail barcode, discovered that 29 of the 33 ballots had arrived on time legally, were legally cast, and they weren't counted. And only 9 votes separated the two candidates. Maybe the candidate that's sitting in the chair over in the other chamber would have still won had those 29 ballots been counted. I don't know. No one knows now. But in my humble opinion, it was wrong. It was wrong that those 29 ballots were not counted. So the House spent at least a month of this legislative session trying to figure out how to solve that problem. How to make sure that that would never happen again, and if it did, we would have a way to decide how those votes would be counted. And that's what the original House File 692 did, and passed the House on a 96-0 vote. Today we have an amendment before us that strikes everything after the enacting clause, puts in different pieces of a bill that came out of this committee just a couple weeks ago that never made it to the floor of the Senate. I will give you credit, Senator Smith, that you did take some of the more egregious pieces of it out. But even though you did address the signature, the verification of signatures, which I'm sure others will address in far more detail, I want to point out just one thing. You refer to section 53.22 of the code. And that is those who are confined in a hospital, assisted living, or a nursing home. My sister lived in a condo. We brought workers in, 24-hour-a-day care, into her condo. She had MS. She could not write anymore. She had to use a stamp. But you limited this now to anyone who is in 53.22, which is a nursing home or hospital assisted living. She didn't live in any of those. She lived in her own home. So she still couldn't have access to the ballot. Unfortunately, she died, so I don't think she doesn't have to worry about it anymore. So even though you attempted to fix that problem, you did not for those who have a disability and are confined in their home. So you still need to correct that piece. So, members, I don't know what's happening in this state right now, but a state that used to be very welcoming, that used to make sure that our elections were open to everyone, that they were legally counted, we're making it harder and harder as we go along to exercise that constitutional right. I am urging you to reject this amendment and return to the original House File 692 as it came out of the House on a 96-0 vote and bring this bill out in today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
As Senator Gold said, the amendment before us is a strike after, so this becomes the bill. And my thoughts are, if you create a barrier or a hoop that someone has to jump through, let's say like the satellite policy at a state-owned building like the vet center. One thing that you put in the other bill that you haven't taken out is the closing of the polling times. So I heard our colleague Senator Smith say that he wanted uniformity between partisan elections, general elections, primary elections, municipal elections, etc. Let's all close the polls an hour earlier. Now, we did talk about in anecdotal ways that nobody necessarily knows who votes between 8 and 9 p.m. in general elections. I have some information before me today that there was one county, and there's 4,000 people voted between the hours of 8 and 9 in the general election. I don't care if just one person votes between the hours of 8 and 9. I don't want to vote for anything that's going to take that hour away from them under the guise of making it uniform under the partisan or the general or the municipal or whatever. So, and I know we have some auditors in the room, and I care about auditors, but if the auditors get together, Democrats and Republicans, and they said, it'd be a lot easier because of our workforce or the long hours or the cost of running these elections, if we just close it down between 8 and 9, I don't care, because that takes the polling ability, the voting ability away from citizens for 1 hour. So that's enough right there to say, come on, GOP, I need you to just do something to make it easier. Don't take an hour away. And there's so much more to this legislation that I'll yield to another time, but I think that's what I have to say right now. Thank you.
About in the House bill that fixes the problem with the ballots. In this bill, the solution actually sunsets and repeals that part. So if the legislature doesn't act in future years, any ballot received after polls close cannot be counted, period. And this goes backwards from the current law. So I really don't get that. If you're fixing a problem, then why would you sunset and repeal it at a certain date? That just doesn't make sense to me. And then the amendment makes a voter ineligible if they fail to vote in one presidential election. I realize the presidential election is the most important election that people usually make a point to vote in, but if they happen to miss that election for whatever reason, I just think it's unfair to immediately put them into the, inactive category. So it just makes it, I think, harder, both from a campaign standpoint to try and kind of corral your voters and figure out who your targeted voters are, and then also from just a election prediction standpoint to figure out who's going to turn out. So that just creates a whole new problem that I never even crossed my mind before. So I don't see anything good in here to vote for. Thanks.
You're supposed to vote in Iowa and not harder. That's kind of the bottom line here. I'll just point out one item that I've noticed in here. I work at UNI, so students are a big concern for me. And there's an item in this amendment that says that every student who graduates from an Iowa college or university, public or private, must fill out a form of where they intend to vote as a part of their graduation requirement. So I'm not sure, first off, where someone intends to reside after they graduate has to do with as a condition of their graduation period, let alone what does that have to do with their eligibility to vote in an election. So that's a serious concern for me. I just wanted to point that out, and I think for most of us, if not all of us, graduating from college is probably the most uncertain time in your entire life. You don't know where you're going to be after that. So, I actually wound up going into Peace Corps after I graduated from college immediately. I used an absentee ballot to vote back at home. That was very important to me. Folks wind up going a variety of places. I mentor students at UNI. One of them I received an email from today reminding me that I'm a reference for her. She's still looking for a job after 5 months or so. After her graduation, she doesn't know where she's going to wind up. She wouldn't have known how to fill that out. So again, there are a host of problems with this. I just wanted to point out that one, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, to kind of clean up some things that I've found in this amendment, which will be the bill, I first want to comment, or Senator Smith. Senator Smith, will you yield?
Yes.
Senator, I don't have the actual copy of the bill here, the amendment, full amendment here, because I've been medically instructed not to carry over 5 pounds for 2 weeks. So I'm carrying light work. But it says here, this amendment makes it ineligible, my notes, it's not the bill. This amendment makes it ineligible any voter that failed to vote in one presidential election. Now, as I understand voting, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that what it says in the amendment? That if I vote in municipal elections and I vote in gubernatorial elections, but I fail to vote in a presidential election, do I become ineligible as a voter?
So, let me get my notes out on that. My notes have not hit the 5 pound mark, but it's getting close. So what we're doing here is, first of all, so if someone's missed a presidential election, they would be sent a notice in January. If they've not made a change, if they've not re-registered, a change of address, they've not re-registered, and they have not voted, then come January, it would be marked inactive. We'd send out a notification. If something was sent back, no problem. If there's no response, then we look to go to the last address, which would be an absentee ballot address. We'd send it there. If there was no response, then they would turn inactive. Inactive does not remove anybody from the list. All inactive does is just put you in the inactive category. You can still walk in and vote at any time inactive, and it will immediately change you to active, just like that. You would then have to miss 2 consecutive general elections after being inactive, then you'd be removed. So 2 consecutive general elections, that would take up to 4 years.
That's the current. So if you don't vote within 4 years.
No, that's what's in the bill, in the amendment.
That's what's in the amendment.
Yes.
So what's the point of an inactive status? If I go to the school board election in September, or a city election or a special election, but I chose not to vote in a presidential election, why would that affect my status as a voter? And why would it be notated that I'm in an inactive status?
Well, first of all, I think there's a high probability if you're voting in municipal elections, school board elections, you're going to be voting in presidential elections.
Well, this last election, believe me, there are probably people that had a choice between Trump and Clinton who didn't vote. They didn't like their choices. And there may be that, and it's sad that there is that condition, but it's my prerogative as a U.S. citizen under the Constitution, the right to vote. And if I choose not to vote, as long as I stay within the parameters of what it takes to stay eligible, which is to vote once in 4 years.
I was going to finish my statement, but...
So you understand, you're drawing a conclusion that everybody would want to vote in presidential, and I would say I don't agree with that.
Can I finish my statement?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, leading into it, I think there would be a high probability if you're voting in municipal, if you're voting in school, you're going to be voting in the presidential. I will give you, there is a small, very small percentage of people that probably voted some and chose to not vote in the presidential. And yes, it would start the process, but the process is also not changing, not registering. The reason it's after a presidential is that's when you have the highest turnout. And the whole point of this, the whole reason why we're doing this is making sure where people live in the correct jurisdiction, the correct county. That's the whole point. We need to make sure people are voting on their correct state senator, their correct state representative, their correct congressman, and that's why we're making sure they're where they're at. If they're not voting in a presidential election, chances are they probably moved, and so we want to send this out to make sure that they're in the correct jurisdiction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take my time back. I do not agree with that. I don't think, first of all, you assume what people think or why they do what they do. And this, I'm not sure. It says I have to vote in one presidential election not to be inactive. And I'm wondering, what if I go in and I just vote for the county extension service? It's doing a presidential election, didn't vote for the president, didn't vote for the Iowa Senate or any legislative race. I voted for my neighbor who's running for county extension or Broadlawn's Board of Trustees. I voted in that election, but I didn't vote for the president. I voted in September because I voted for the school board. I don't know why they were exercising so much assumption and authority over people and their eligibility, because I don't even understand what being on the ineligible list means. It's like being on double secret probation. I mean, do we tab those people and track them? Why don't we just every 4 years check it? If they've not been a voter, then they're not registered to vote any longer. We assume they've chosen, moved, whatever, not to be part of the electorate. A lot of people don't vote because they don't want to be on jury duty. So we've changed the ways they can find people for jury duty in the election roles. I'll get off of that point, but that's one that I just don't get. And I'm going to go back to the verification of signatures. We've got poll workers who we're going to ask to verify ballot signatures with previous signatures. Now, I vote all the time, and poll workers generally are elderly people, and they work maybe once a year, once every 2 years. They enjoy it, but they don't even know who I am, and yet, well, maybe they don't vote for me. But if they looked at my signature when I first got elected and first registered to vote in 1970, I can tell you my signature is much different today than it was in 1970. Now, I'm not in a nursing home and I'm not in hospice or a care facility. I'm just getting a little bit older and I write a little bit different, unfortunately. And what signature do we verify with? I mean, what signature will the senator yield again? Senator, will you yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator, what signature would you compare my absentee ballot signature to?
So, this is a hypothetical. In your statement, you gave me a couple different, so I want to make sure that, like, some people say, like, why do you answer questions a certain way? Because I want to be so technical.
We know you do something.
I want to make sure that I answer your question, because in your comments, you talked about going to the polls, now you're talking about absentee. So
This says ballot. This signature verifications on absentee ballots from poll workers. I want to know what signature does the poll worker have that they use to compare to, because if I vote absentee, I go to the election office. Okay? What signature would they use? My original application for voter registration?
okay, I really want to be as accurate as possibly can. So I want to clarify your hypothetical. So there's a couple different scenarios. I want to make sure I'm answering the correct one, because you can vote at a satellite, you can vote in person ahead of time, you can vote at the polls, and you can vote absentee. Which one are you talking about in your hypothetical, so I can answer your question?
Answer them all. At each one, tell me at each one, what signature, is there a standard signature that is used for my registration to say, I'm Anthony Bizignano? And so, does that follow from the election office to the satellite, or from the election office to the counter at the election office, or from the election office to my polling place election day? Answer each one of those. What signature would they compare it to?
First of all, I didn't know your name was Anthony, so I learned something new today, so thank you for that. All right, so if you sign your absentee request form to receive your absentee ballot, you would then sign it. Then you would send it in, you would receive a ballot that you would have to sign the envelope then. Okay? I do want to point, for the record, in this bill, current law is if you forget to sign it at 9 p.m. when the polls close, you are out of luck. We don't count the ballot. I want you to know, in this amendment here and in the previous bill, you can go now all the way till Monday at noon after the election, and you can come in and you can sign your ballot if you forgot, and the vote will be counted.
And who would remind me that I didn't sign so I could come in that
And
month?
the auditors will send, will
The
contact
notice.
you. Yep,
Okay.
that's current law. So there, more people will be voting.
I'm giving you that one. That's about the only incentive I can see to increase voter count would be that, if I forgot to sign my ballot.
So then back to the hypothetical. So then you would have to, they would check the signature from the request form to the signature that is on the ballot and verify that they are similar.
And we're talking about the affidavit envelope.
Yes, that is correct. Now, I do want to point out that it was said earlier in debate.
I'm gonna take my
Third-
time back.
third-
I'm gonna take my time back because you answered my question.
Okay.
I needed to know, you were comparing my request to the affidavit. That answers that question. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is the control of the satellite voting, which requires petition, so forth, and sure is much easier for me to get 100 signatures for a satellite voting location than someone in Adams County in the population comparison. But why are we intruding into the county election commissioner the ability to determine the satellite voting stations when they know best where they're needed? And I mean, that's why I didn't carry the bill. I do think it's too heavy. Okay, forget the weight. I think it's way too heavy. And so I think when you intrude into local elected officials' areas of responsibility, we kind of reach too far. But that's the choice you've made with your amendment. And so to summate my points, because we have plenty of time to talk about this on the floor, I can see the hallway is getting busier. And you named the one thing that is going to help people or excite people to vote. Give me a couple more. Give me what you got in this amendment. Now I'm going to ask the senator to yield again, and I hope you stay on point with me. Give me specifics of, because our goal should be to get most people to vote, as many people as we can. That's the thing that holds the glue of this country together, is a free voting democracy. Where's all the incentives? Because I see what Senator Giddens said about students, and that they have to declare where they're going to live. First of all, I don't think you can ask anybody that. I don't think that if I choose to go to grad school in another state, let's say Missouri, or Minnesota, or California, I choose to remain and keep my voting rights here in Iowa, but I choose to go to school in another state for graduate school. So if they say, where do you intend to be after graduation? I say, well, California. Or I say homeless. Or I'm going to the Peace Corps, or I'm going to the military. Doesn't matter. You should be able to stay as an Iowa voter in any one of those situations. And I don't think you can ask a kid who just graduated college, where's going to be your permanent residency? They don't know. They may move for a few months and want to come back home and live with mom and dad. Some of us still have that. I think that is probably the most obnoxious question of anything in here, is we're asking students to declare their life, and there is a consequence to that. That they're going to be taken off the voting rolls because they said, I'm going to California, or I'm going to the Peace Corps, or I'm going into the military. We let the military go to the military. They're voting from Iraq and Afghanistan and South Korea. They're voting from all over the world. And if I say I'm going to the military, I don't even know where I'm going. They're going to tell me where I'm going, and then they're going to move me from where I'm at to somewhere they need me. So I do not understand that question to that group of voters to make it a college requirement, because it requires that the college ask for it. And as a side, and he's from UNI, Senator Giddens, I had a college requirement that I had to learn how to swim to graduate from UNI. Needless to say, I don't know how to swim, and I left UNI. I prefer not to swim than graduate from UNI, even though I like it. So if you could just tell me, really, what is the importance of that declaration by that group of people? And can I maintain my Iowa voting rights if I do go to grad school, or I go to the Peace Corps, or I go to the military? Can you answer that for me?
When you have the highest probability of moving to a new spot is after you graduate from college. I did. I had the opportunity to move wherever I wanted to in the entire world, and I chose to come to the great state of Iowa. I moved right after graduation.
How about community colleges? I mean,
Yeah.
most people in community college are graduating. A lot of them work, own a home, reside here. They're just going back to school for higher training and so forth.
Senator,
I just want to know really what's the nexus of that.
I'm more than happy to answer your questions. I just ask that you not interrupt me. I don't interrupt you. Please just show me the same respect. I'm sure.
I have the floor, Senator, so thank you. I don't need your answer. Okay? Members of the committee, the bill that we're amending passed 96 to nothing. Says something. As you know, Democrats' job is to challenge. Well, there wasn't a lot of challenge over in the House, because what they did made sense. Saves a lot of time, and I can tell you, you can compare Senate files to House files, and you can carry around a lot more House files than you can carry around Senate files. I mean, I haven't seen a 53-page bill out of the House, let alone a 53-page amendment that keeps reappearing. This is voters' rights. You know, as much as some of my colleagues defend the constitutional right to bear arms, when it comes to voting rights, this doesn't really seem to be the thing that you want to stand up and say, no, at all costs, this comes first. They're right. But all we do is try to find reasons to make it harder and to get people not to vote. I hope everybody votes for Senator Veenstra when he runs. I hope we get as many votes out. I mean, if I could, without losing my residency, I would move there just to vote for him in the primary. We need to encourage participation in this amendment, other than the crumbles that was thrown out by Senator Smith, is really a very discouraging document. And that's what we ought to be looking at. Not as D's, not as R's, as representatives of people. College kids, senior citizens, the disabled, it doesn't matter. That's what we're here for. And this is the most important exercise, is to exercise your right to vote. Totally distinguishes us from every other country in the world. Open, fair elections. So, I ask you not to vote for this amendment. I want you to vote for 96 to nothing. And we've cleaned up the mess. And we got the answers. It's done. It's here. For whatever reason, we're looking at the same thing over and over again. It's a waste of time. And that's why I don't mind how long I talk to hold this place up. Because this is one of the fundamental rights people have. And it's being attacked. And it's being attacked with no real good explanation of why in most cases. We've named a few. There's more. We're going to have a good day on the floor of the Senate with this, if this continues to come forward. Because my job is to make sure my constituents have every opportunity to vote, as long hours as we get extended. As far as I'm concerned, voting ought to be a holiday, and it ought to be by mail, and we should make every citizen that we can vote, not try to discourage and shade the points. I don't think that's our role. I don't think that's American, and I'd ask you, consciously, here's the agreed to. vote no on the amendment. Let's bury it, get rid of a bad idea, and move on. Thank you.